Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Lessons. Today, we are tackling third grade of high school. I think this is our first lesson, our first third grade high school lesson. And we are diving right into past perfect simple and continuous and the difference between used to and would, the usage between used to and would. It's if you mastered so to speak, present perfect, simple and continuous, I think you will not have much trouble with past perfect, simple and continuous because they're pretty similar, but there are, of course, some differences. So let's just begin. First of all, we have a text. I will read the text and then together we will figure out where in the text there are examples of past perfect simple and past perfect continuous. And the text goes, when I arrived on set to interview Paul Lacovara one afternoon, he looked exhausted. That was probably to be expected, given that he'd spent the morning jumping off buildings and being beaten up. Paul is a stunt double, the unknown star of films such as Thor and The Avengers. His career began 10 years ago. Since childhood, Paul had always wanted to be either an actor or a fighter pilot. His maths had never been good enough for a career in flying, but he managed to get a job as an extra in the film We Were Soldiers. He turned out to be the perfect stunt double for action films, mainly because in the months before starting work, he had been learning martial arts and training as a bodybuilder. He hadn't been doing the job for very long when he was noticed by the director, and his career took off from there. Within 10 years, he had won an award for his stunt work and had received nominations for 2 more. And amazingly, he still has a 100% accident-free record. Good for him. Okay, let's take my little pencil here. We're going to take my little pencil. Let's put it in red so it can be visible. And first off, let's find all the examples of past perfect simple. So when I arrived, that's nothing. That's past simple. He looked exhausted. That was probably to be expected, given that he had spent. That's our first past perfect simple in the text. The morning jumping off buildings and being beaten up. Paul is a stunt double, the unknown star of films such as Thor and The Avengers. His career began 10 years ago. Since childhood, Paul had always wanted, again, we have past perfect simple, to be either an actor or a fighter pilot. His maths had never been good enough. Also, past perfect simple. Because of this being, you might wonder if it's past perfect continuous, but it's not because we don't have the ing format, so it's still past perfect simple. But he managed to get a job as an extra in the film We Were Soldiers. He turned out to be the perfect stunt double for action films, mainly because in the months before starting work, he had been learning. There we go. That's our first. Yeah, there goes my line. It's not very straight. There goes our first past perfect continuous, had been learning. As you can see, it's very similar to present perfect continuous because you have the participle of the verb to be, been, had been, be was been. Been is the participle. We have the ing ending, learning, but instead of have over here, we have the past version we have had. So he had been learning instead of have been learning, which would be in the present perfect simple. Training as a bodybuilder, he hadn't been doing. Again, we have past perfect continuous. He was noticed by the director and his career took off from there. Within 10 years, he had won. Again, past perfect simple. Whenever we have a state verb, we use past perfect simple. And had received nominations for 2 more. And finally, finally, that's it. Those are our past perfect instances in the text. Now that we have done that, let's move on to a few rules. I think you will like them. So here we have a few rules. It says, learn this, past perfect simple and continuous. We have A, B, C, and D. So 4 things we have to keep in mind when we deal with the past perfect simple and continuous. The first one is that we use the past perfect simple for completed actions that happened before a specific time in the past. This is called sort of the double past, in Croatian dupla prošlost. It means that past perfect always talks about things that happened twice in the past, before another thing that happened in the past. Since this is sort of confusing, I presume for most of you, I will say it in Croatian as well. Dakle, present perfect se koristi općenito za stvari koje su se dogodile prije nekog trenutka u prošlosti. Znači, u prošlosti je on otišao u grad, ali prije nego što je on otišao u grad, dogodilo mu se nešto drugo. Kupio je cvijeće, recimo, ili opravo je zube. Znači, kod oba past perfect trebamo to imati na umu. Da se to događa prije neke radnje u prošlosti, za razliku od present perfecta koji se događa prije neke radnje u sadašnjosti. Right? So here, a present perfect simple is used for completed actions that happened before a specific time in the past. For instance, by the age of 6, she'd appeared on television twice. Znači, ona možda ima 30, ali prije nego što je imala 6, već je 2 puta bila na televiziji. Znači, kad bi radili kronologiju njenog pojavljivanja na televiziji ili njenog života općenito, prvo na lenti vremena bi bila ta 2 pojavljivanja na telki, onda bi bilo ona napuni 6 godina i onda tek nakon bi bilo sve ostalo. So, by the age of 6, she'd appeared on television twice, or she had appeared on television twice. Next, we use the past perfect continuous for longer actions or situations that happened before a specific time in the past. Znači, slično kao i uvijek sa continuousom, fokus je na radnji čije je trajanje istaknuto. The length of the action, the process of the action is amplified in the past perfect continuous. For instance, they were tired because they'd been rehearsing hard. They had been rehearsing hard. To znači da su neko vrijeme vježbali. They were rehearsing for a while, and that's why they were tired. With state verbs, we use the past perfect simple. Naravno, znači kad god imamo state verb ili glagole stanja, uvijek će biti simple, pa tako i u past perfectu. Čak i kad imamo for i since, to say how long an action had been in progress. Na primjer, he'd been an actor since childhood. He had been an actor since childhood. Ali, naravno, with action verbs, we use the past perfect continuous with for and since to say how long an action had been in progress. For instance, she'd been waiting for years before she became famous, or she had been waiting. Dakle, glavne razlike kad je glagol stanja, koristimo naravno past perfect simple sa for i since. Kad je glagol kretanja, glagol radnje, onda ćemo koristiti past perfect continuous sa for i since. I past perfect simple koristimo za neke dovršene radnje koje su se dogodile prije specifičnog vremena u prošlosti. A continuous koristimo za istu stvar, past perfect continuous, ali za duže radnje ili situacije koje su se događale u prošlosti, to jest prije određenog trenutka u prošlosti. Now, let's solve this. Idemo riješiti ovaj zadatak. Complete the sentences with the verbs in brackets. Use the past perfect simple or past perfect continuous. Then match each sentence with a rule in the learn this box. Znači, moramo povezati zašto smo napisali to što smo napisali sa pravilom koje nam je reklo zašto. So first we have, after he finished speaking, everyone stood up and clapped. I would say had finished. Because finish is a state verb, or at least it's a finite verb. Znači, and we will connect it to C. right? You either finish or you don't. It's it's an instantaneous verb. It cannot go into, it can go into continuous. You can say, oh, we're just finishing, right? Or they had just been finishing before he entered the room, right? That would make sense in the continuous. But here it's implied that he finished, that the action is over, the action is short, completed. It's a completed action in the past, so we will use the past perfect simple. Next, we have they planned the project for months when it was suddenly canceled. I would say they had been planning. They had been planning. And of course, we have the doubling over here because plan ends in CVC, which means consonant, vowel, consonant. In Croatian, suglasnik, samoglasnik, suglasnik. Kad imamo riječi koje završavaju na tu kombinaciju, onda će nam se jedno slovo u continuousu duplati. A zašto sam ja stavila ovdje continuous? Zato što je to duža radnja. It's a longer action and it's 4 months, znači mjesecima su planirali nešto. Također, it's an action verb with for and since, tako da će sigurno ići u continuous. Next, we have we not wait long when the actors arrived. I would say we hadn't or had not, but been waiting long. We hadn't been waiting long when the actors arrived. I put this here because it's a sort of longer action, even though he says we had not been waiting long. But it's an action that can be interrupted, the waiting. Unlike simple, which is always an action which can be which is completed. You know, for instance, he had finished speaking, he was done, right? But here they had been waiting and waiting and waiting, and then the actors arrived, or they had been waiting for a little while, and then the actors arrived. Many fans queue since midday to see the stars. I would say that this is, this is interesting because queue can be a noun or a verb. If it's a noun, it means sort of a line. For instance, a line at the bank, a queue, right? But when it's a verb, it means basically the same thing. It means people standing in line. And for me, this is sort of questionable because I'm not sure if I would define this as a state verb or an action verb, to queue. I would say it's more of an action verb, even though it's sort of just standing there. But I would say that it's still a decision is necessary and it can be interrupted. And it can last for a while, which implies that it's an action verb because state verbs usually don't last long and they're very instantaneous, you know, see or not see, hear or not hear. So I would say many fans had been queuing. No, like this. Hold on, let me check. Okay, I checked it. I put it correct. It's correct. Naravno, miče se i na kraju, to jest i stavlja se i na g, but it's a very confusing word. So I had to check just in case. Kad bi bio simple, bilo bi had queued since midday, ali rekla bi da je had been queuing iz ovih razloga koje sam navela zašto mislim da je action verb. Next we have, she know what job she wanted to do since she was a child. I would say she had known what job she wanted to do. Know is a state verb. You either know or you don't know. So it would be simple. He not wear protective clothing when the accident happened, so he was badly injured. This one, kind of got to me a little bit, because where can be treated as an active verb. I am wearing a shirt, it's a longer, it's a longer action to wear something for a while. But in this case, this is an instantaneous thing that happened to him. So I would put continuous here, but I would say that, it's a bit murky with this one. Oops, sorry, not that one. Had been wearing, there we go. Over here, he tried to get into acting for years before he got the part in the film. He had been trying, because it's a longer action in the past, and try is definitely an action verb. She went to Oscars by the age of 30. This is had won, because this is a state verb and it's a short action. It's not a long process. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Here we have complete the sentences with the correct form of the words in brackets. Use the past perfect simple or past perfect continuous, but use no more than 5 words, including the words provided. So, of course, you can pause this now. I'm giving you a chance to try to solve this on your own. And now we can solve it together after you've unpaused it, hopefully. Okay, let's look at this one. She acted years before she won an Oscar. Now, it's a similar one to the last exercise, but I would say that this is she had been acting for years, and it's exactly 5 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she had been acting for years, because it's a longer process and it's an action verb. Joe not visited the USA until he was in his 30s. This, I would say, Joe had not visited the USA, because visit is a shorter action. It's a shorter action than in the past than is, for instance, acting for years. And it's sort of binary action. You either visit or you don't visit. You can use it in the continuous, but then it means something else. It has a slight change in meaning. My cousin had a terrible headache because he watched television since midday. Now, watch is definitely an action verb. See is a state verb, but watch is an action verb, and this is a longer action. See, he's been watching this television for a while, So he had been watching television since midday. Excellent. I'm just praising myself now. That's not very cool. The play was a real disappointment, and we won't see it for such a long time. I would say, because want is a state verb, that I would use we had wanted to see. I would not use we had been wanting to see, because it's a state verb, even though the action, they wanted to see it for a while. It's something that they really yearned for, but still it's a state verb. Were they upset because they not managed buy tickets for the concert that evening? I would say had not managed to buy. Even though buy is an action verb, it's a sort of short, in this case at least, it's a short action. So it would still be in simple, and it's over quickly. They had not managed to buy. If you went to the store and you were there for a few hours, you would say, oh, I'm buying groceries. He had been buying groceries before he went home or something like that. But so it can be treated as a longer action, but then it needs to really be a longer action. This is an instantaneous buy or not buy. So I would say simple. He not worked many weeks before the director noticed him. I would say he had not been working, because it's a simple, interruption, basically. He was working and then he noticed him. So he had not been working long before he was noticed. Let's see next. You leave university by the time you become an extra. By the time, I would say, had you left university? You left university by the time you became an extra, because leave is a sort of binary action. You again, it's not a state verb, but it's leave or not leave. If we say, had you been leaving university, it would imply that the process of leaving was a long one. It took a while for this person to leave. While this question just wants to ask, by that time, did you leave or not? So it's simple. Okay, let's move on to our next exercise. And now that we have covered a bit of past simple and past continuous, we will learn a few more things about things we use in the past. In this case, we will learn the difference between would and used to, as opposed to past simple. So let's read this text together and figure out where in the text we can see would and where in the text we can see used to. So physician Akrit Jaswal had a very unusual childhood. He didn't used to play. So there we go. He didn't used to play with toys like most children. Instead, he used to read a lot. He could read and write from the age of 2. And what did he used to read? There we go, another one. As a 5-year-old boy, Shakespeare. He also had a passion for science and would read everything he could find about human anatomy. He performed his first operation at the age of 7, treating the badly burned hands of a young girl whose family couldn't afford medical care. This operation was filmed and posted on YouTube, leading to worldwide fame for Akrit. At the age of 12, he was accepted into a medical university, becoming the youngest person ever to achieve this in India. He studied there for several years and hopes one day to go to Harvard University. He is currently trying to find a cure for cancer. Now, apart from past simple, which occurs in the text, we have used to play, used to read twice, and would read. So why did we use used to read here and would read here? I will not tell you the answer yet, but you can think about it before we go to our next segment, which is the explanation. So you don't have to wait long. Now, there we have it. Again, we have 4 things we need to keep in mind. The first one is that we use used to and would to talk about past habits and situations that were different in the past, different than now. His family used to be extremely poor. When he was young, he'd spend time studying medicine, or he would spend time studying medicine. We don't use used to or would when we say how long a past habit or situation lasted. In this case, we use the past simple. So he went to college for 5 years. We're not going to say he used to or he would go to college for 5 years. So when we have the amount of time that the action lasted, it's past simple. It's neither of these two. Furthermore, we don't use would with state verbs. We use used to. Again, there's a difference between state verbs and action verbs. So with state verbs, you need used to. He used to love reading. Love is a state verb, so we cannot say he would love reading. And we also avoid using would with questions and negatives. For instance, did he used to play with cars and dolls? we would say that instead of would he play with cars and dolls. People didn't used to become famous so easily in the past, instead of people wouldn't become famous so easily in the past. So if it's a state verb, if it's a question, or if it's a negative, it's always used to. So would is going to happen more rarely, of course, because of this. In some cases, you can use both. If it's an action verb that's not in the question or a negative, usually you can use both. Unless it's this case, unless it shows you how long the action has been going on. And in this case, we will use the past simple. So let's test this newfound knowledge with another exercise. Again, you can pause me and take your time to figure it out. And then you can unpause and we can figure it out together. I will give you a moment. And let's go. So it says, complete the sentences with the correct form of used to or would. In which sentences is either possible, right? Either. So it means both can be possible in some. For instance, he worked as a journalist for a science magazine. I would say that here we have used to, but also would. Because it's, for instance, it doesn't tell us how long the action is, so it's not simple. It's not a state verb, so would can go there. It's not a question or a negative, so, both can go. I would say that used to is more common, though. Years ago, they go on holidays abroad every winter. Again, I would say both can go. I would say would is more often used here. They would go on holidays abroad, but they used to go on holidays abroad. It's fine. Years ago, it just tells us when the action happened, but not for how long. So it's not simple. That actor have really long hair. Now he's bald. Have is a state verb. So it's used to have. Although sometimes, native speakers say, oh, you would have that long hair, it's ungrammatical, but, native speakers use it sometimes. She wear glasses before she became a model. I'm sure she did. This is a question, so we need, did she used to? Did she used to wear glasses before she became a model? I'm sure she did. Lots of people follow him on Twitter, but he's not so popular now. I would say both. Because, again, it doesn't say how long the action is, so it's not simple. It's not a question, negative, or a state verb, so both can go. Lots of people would follow him. Lots of people used to follow him. Both are fine. When I was younger, I was so poor, I never accept invitations to go out. Now, this is not technically a negative because it's not accept, right? It's never accept, so we have an adverbial here, right? We have an adverb that tells us. So I would still say I never used to accept, but I would never accept is also correct. So both of them, I would even say that would is more commonly used. So I would never accept, or I use, but it would not use to never. I never used to accept. So one of these, either I would never accept invitations, or I never used to accept invitations. So both are okay, but I would say that would is even more common. Okay, moving on to our final exercise. Again, it's the use of English. We need to complete the sentences with the correct form of the verbs in brackets. We don't have the permission to change the order of the words, and we can add up to 3 other words. So there's a lot of information here. Take your time. Try to solve this final exercise, and I will do it now. once you unclick pause. Okay, let's see. Gary used want to be a vet. So we have used, so we're going to use used to want. He used to want to be a vet. When you were younger, used have a favorite toy. Did you used to have? Now we added how many? We added 3. Did you and do. So when you were younger, did you used to have a favorite toy? Or it would also be easy to say, did you have a favorite toy? But this is easier. This is more necessary because we are learning this right now. Years ago, people not want to become celebrities as much as they do now. People didn't used to want to become celebrities as much as they do now. He was such a lazy student that would do his homework 5 minutes before class. He would do his homework 5 minutes before the class. Isn't that Ali? She used to be at your school. I would say didn't she used to be, because that means Nije li ona bila? Because she assumes that she was at the school. That's why she's asking it in the negative. Didn't she used to be there? My parents would let me stay up late at weekends. If it's not a negative, then it's just, we don't add anything. My parents would let me. So this one is good. Oh no, I forgot to do here. He would do his homework 5 minutes before the class. I presume that it was already written in the sentence, but it wasn't. Okay, that was our final exercise for today. I hope I cleared some things up for you. I want to wish you good luck with your further studying and with learning about past perfect and the difference between would and used to. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you for your time.